Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Seth Joyner Show. Not a whole lot going on in the world of football this week, but nonetheless, there's still plenty to talk about. The Philadelphia Eagles making moves, not big moves, but moves. A lot of news going on as far as the NFL owners meeting is concerned. We'll get to that. We will talk about, I think I'm going to jump right into this one. The Deshaun Watson press conference earlier last week. There's been a lot of talk going on about his press conference and how he handled it and how the Cleveland Browns kind of put him out there to handle it. I don't think that under those circumstances there's any right way or wrong way. You know that anytime a player finds himself in a situation like Deshaun finds himself in, there are going to be people who, even if he's 100% exonerated, even if he gets through, the civil side of it, now that two grand juries have decided that they're not going to press any charges, that there's still people out there that's going to feel like, hey, you know what? He's still guilty. Be that as it may, there's this level as I began to listen throughout the week at the talking heads, not only in radio, but also in TV. A lot of people felt like, he should have been more contrite. And listen, I'm always going to err on the side of the players, being a former player, but I'm going to do it the right way at all times. I just feel like if that man feels like that he didn't do anything wrong, that he wasn't culpable for the things that he's been accused of, then what level of contrition is it that we're looking for as far as all of that is concerned? I just don't get it. I don't understand it. It really makes no sense. I was muted, guys. I'm sorry about that. I saw the comment. I apologize. Was talking about Deshaun Watson and my take on his press conference. I'll go back and kind of reiterate that was about where we were. There's a lot of people out there that felt like there should have been some contrition, that there should have been some apologies. Did he put himself in a bad situation? Only he and those young ladies know what the circumstances were. I'm of the opinion, and if someone's telling the truth and someone's been damaged and someone's been wrong and someone's been hurt, listen, they deserve justice. But if I put myself in one of those young ladies' position and I actually, am called to do a massage, and for some reason or another, Deshaun does something inappropriate, then guess what? I'm not going back. Some of these women went back multiple times. Now you can call it the money, you can call it whatever you want to. But this is just a tough situation all the way around because there is no good way, there is no solid way for this to move forward. The best thing that can happen for the Cleveland Browns and Deshaun Watson is for the season to roll around, and I mean roll around in a hurry. Because if he has the type of success that they're anticipating that he's having, then I think some of these things just kind of fall by the wayside. And he says he's going to fight tooth and nail, and I think he should. these civil suits, because at the end of the day, if he's been exonerated, in 2 grand juries of all criminal charges, then he has to fight with everything in him to make sure that, none of his money leaves his pocket in a civil manner. Now, again, I'm not saying that he did something wrong. I'm not saying that he didn't do something wrong. What I'm trying to say is that at the end of the day, I honestly, if a grand jury would have found something, and trust me, they were trying to find the evidence, they were trying to find those things that would bring charges. If the grand jury, both of them, had found something, we would be looking at this from a different light. That's where I'm going to go on that one. I'm going to leave it at that. Like I said earlier, not a whole lot really going on in the world of free agency. I'm not so sure why that is. I got my top guys that are left still on the free agent market, and for some reason or another, well, I know why, and this is why. These are my top guys that are left. I think Odell Beckham, when he can get back 100%, he's one of the top guys. No matter what you think or how you feel about Antonio Brown, he's still one of the top wide receivers in the game and can get it done. I believe that somebody's going to sign him, before it's all said and done. Dwayne Brown, offensive tackle for the Seattle Seahawks, is still out there. Jadeveon Clowney. I've been, critical of him at times, but I think he's a good piece that you may not rely on an ongoing basis, but I think he fits in your scheme as a pass rusher because he can make some plays here and there that can make a difference in the game. These are my guys that I've highlighted that I believe that, could help the Eagles. Stephon Gilmore, who's with the Carolina Panthers last year. You got Rob Gronkowski. He's not one of those guys, but, with Tampa Bay, he's going to sign back on at some point with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Then you got Akeem Hicks. He was with the Bears last year. Been injured the last couple of years, but when he's healthy, he's a major difference maker. You got the Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu, been with Kansas City for the last 3 years. And then you got Bobby Wagner, who I feel would be a great upgrade and great competition at the linebacker position for the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, there's one thing with these, I think, 10 guys, or how many guys, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 guys. And 4 of those guys, Gilmore, Hicks, Mathieu, and Bobby Wagner, I feel could potentially be, good fits for the Eagles down the road. The problem is they're all 29 years of age or older, with Clowney and Tyrann Mathieu being 29. All the other guys are 30, 31 and over. And some of those guys are going to be turning 34. I believe Dwayne Brown will be turning 37 as we roll into the regular season. So, I mean, listen, these guys are going to get 1-year deals. You're talking about, elite level players in the past who have commanded, high dollars. They're not going to want to come in on a 1-year deal. They're not going to want to play for a discount in regards to what they've been playing for. But as the free agent market closes and we get closer to the draft, and then once teams kind of figure out what they have and what they replace via the draft, then you're going to have, these players sitting here that can either be mentors to young players or be significant contributors that can be productive for another year or two that are going to be sitting out there looking for work. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see, how all of that plays out. I want to segue now. Let's move over to and listen. I'm just talking. I actually love this format, man, where I get an opportunity to kind of look at you guys' questions, and I'll run through my rundown of the show, and then I'll go back and pull some of you guys' questions out. But the show hasn't changed that much that we're not going to be talking I'm not going to have, guests to come on. But there's just not a lot going on. The closer we get to the draft, I'll start having some more guests on. They can come in and give us a breakdown on what's going on with the draft, project what they think, where and what they think the Eagles will do. Also, we'll talk about some of the moves that are going to be made, because I really believe that at some point in time, you're going to start to see a flurry of moves as we get closer to the draft. Teams are going to be jockeying for position to get in place to get the guy that they want. I believe Howie Roseman will be extremely active leading up to the draft. But let's segue over to the NFL owners meetings. And, the owners are down in Florida. And two things that really highlighted, the owners meeting, and it really wasn't a whole lot. But the one thing is, the playoff overtime rule. And the NFL expands the Rooney Rule. So now, and I agree with this. I like this. I like the fact that both teams in the playoffs are both going to have an opportunity to possess the ball, at least one offensive possession. If both team ties and it's a score after their first possessions, then it goes back to the old rules. It's now sudden death, and the first team to score actually wins the game. If the team kicking off to start the overtime period scores a safety on the receiving team's initial possession, the team that kicked off is the winner. That's interesting. I didn't know that until I actually, just read this. When you talk about the overtime rules, I like this. I don't understand why it's only for the playoffs. I just think that it makes more sense. The most sense. I think there's an equality. I think the number is something like 83%. The team that wins the toss is actually the team that actually wins the game. But I think that, when you talk about these quarterbacks and how good these quarterbacks are, I mean, how many of us would have loved to have seen Josh Allen get one more possession against the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, in the AFC playoffs this year? I think we all would have loved to see that. I just believe that, I'm not a big proponent of bringing porting over what they do at the collegiate level to the pro game. It's a completely different game with a completely different set of circumstances. The college players are only playing, pretty much, 10 to 12 games a season. And then, they're restricted during the week and how much time they can spend on football. As a professional, that is your job, is different. And I think that the right thing to do is what they've done here is to pretty much just go ahead and, give each offense an opportunity. And both defenses are, in a position where they've got to make something happen and they've got to make it stop. That I like. The second thing is I'm going to talk about this amendment to the Rooney Rule, because the new rule now says that each team this year for the 2022 season must hire at least one minority assistant. They've also expanded the rule. The Rooney Rule has now been expanded to women as well. My issue with this is I just feel like when you're talking about minority hires, I was listening to a broadcast earlier today, and the gentleman was saying, he said that this is a play that we're going to see reverberations 3 to 5 years down the road. That's not quick enough for my liking. The other thing that it does is that I heard him say, the gentleman said, we've had this, and understand, because when I first saw it, I didn't really understand it until I really started to delve into it. it has to be an offensive assistant because the trend is most of the head coaches in the NFL are over on the offensive side of the ball. There has not been enough representation as far as offensive coordinators are concerned that allows African American coaches to move up through the ranks and now become NFL head coaches. The guy that I was listening to, he said, there's been a whole bunch of conversation about Eric Bieniemy, and he's had a lot of interviews, and for some reason or other, no one's hired him. And he said, maybe he's just not the guy. Let's just move on. I call BS on that. I'm sorry. I just call BS because you are attempting to seed the minority market with minority offensive assistants that the league is going to help teams finance that position. Now, if you know anything about the NFL, these coaches can have as many coaches on their staff as an owner will allow them to have, or as many as a owner will pay. So I can remember where there was a time where you only had a position coach at each position and maybe, a couple of quality control guys. But now every position has a coach and an assistant. You got quality controls across the board. Some of these rosters have 20 plus coaches on their staff. So I'm not so sure that this is really the remedy because it moves too slow for my liking. And I say that because, this fight has been going on a long time. A lot of you don't know. I mean, you go back into the 50s. There was no African-American players playing football, I believe, in the 50s. It wasn't until the 60s that you first started getting African-American players on the field. And then you had this thing where, they only could play certain positions. You certainly couldn't play the quarterback position. And as time went on, that barrier was broken. And my good friend and colleague, Ray Didinger, made a great point. He said, once African-American players were allowed to begin to play in the NFL became a better product because of it. He said, and for a long time, there were certain positions, particularly the quarterback position, that African-Americans couldn't play. And you look at how that has changed, and the game is better for it because you've got some meritocracy at the quarterback position as far as minorities are concerned. So if the players made the game better and the quarterback made the game better, why is it taking so long for the NFL to own up to the fact that, hey, you know what? The game will be better if you have more African-American coaches that are coaching in the league. Listen, you got 70+% of the players in the NFL African-American. Why is there such a disparity? I mean, you're going to tell me that guys like Eric Bieniemy and Todd Bowles, how many guys have gotten second chances? Josh McDaniels. The list just goes on and on. Guys who have been head coaches before and failed. Bill Belichick, he went to Cleveland and fell flat on his face, and all of a sudden he gets another shot, and look at what he's become. So a guy like Todd Bowles deserves another shot after winning the Super Bowl and having also one of the better guys, one of the better defenses, I should say, in the NFL last year, with all the injuries that they had to endure. I just don't get it, and I'm telling you right now, this Rooney Rule to me is a crock, because if you have to have a rule that tells owners, hey, you know what, Dan, I'm 100. He was on my tongue, and my thought went somewhere else. Leslie Frazier as well, done a phenomenal job in Buffalo after faltering in Minnesota. So I don't understand why some of these guys aren't getting a look. So bringing more guys up through the fray is to me is not necessarily the answer. I mean, you can talk about, we need more African-American representation on the offensive side of the ball. But look, you've got Byron Leftwich, You've got Eric Bieniemy. You're not going to know any differently than that some of these other coaches who are getting jobs, first time jobs, like Nick Sirianni. How do we know that he's the guy? He's getting a shot to prove that he's the guy. And we're talking about two guys that have Super Bowl resumes and calling plays for two of the most prolific quarterbacks, Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes, in the history of the game. And these guys can't get a look. They can't get a head coaching job. David, I'll give you some love here too. You want to talk about, this was like really a sore spot for me. When Deuce Staley walked out of the building, and people can say what they want to, he walked out of the building because guess what? They turned around and they gave the job to Nick Sirianni after Deuce Staley had been here through Andy Reid, through Chip Kelly, and through Doug Peterson and won a Super Bowl. They gave it to somebody else rather than giving it to Deuce. It just didn't make any sense to me. And Mr. Carter, I'm going to give you some love right quick because I've been saying this forever. Black coaches get subpar teams to get better draft picks. Then they get fired. Listen, you're 100% correct. I've been saying this for years. The problem for African-American coaches is that, they normally get the jobs that, like Brian Flores says, you're propped up to fail. You're going to fail. And why would I say that? Most African-American coaches get jobs for teams that have no franchise quarterback, whose salary cap is depleted, and who pretty much don't have much in the way of talent on their roster. Okay. And these coaches aren't going to get 5 years to rebuild this thing because that's really what it takes. When you take a team like the New York Jets aren't going to get fixed in 2 to 3 years. It's not going to happen. They've been abysmal. They've been a laughingstock, for decades. And a coach is not going to walk in there in a year or two and turn it all around. It's just not going to happen that way. I don't care how many first-round draft picks you get. You draft a young quarterback, guess what? He's got to have time to grow into his job. But what winds up happening? Because these coaches have to take these jobs, and I say they have to take them because, listen, if I'm a coach in the NFL and I've been coaching for 15, 20 years, and my ambition is to be a head coach, okay, the first opportunity that crops up, I have supreme confidence in myself that guess what? I can go in and I can make it happen, okay? And I think that I'm being hired to turn it around. But when you're there and you're making, what do you think Brian Flores is thinking about the moves that the Miami Dolphins made this year to make that roster better for their new head coach? Okay. They weren't making those kind of moves. They weren't jumping all over. They weren't jumping through hoops to try to help Brian Flores be successful. That's just the facts. So these African-American coaches get these jobs where they're set up to fail. And in 2 years, 2.5, sometimes 3 maximum, when they can't get it turned around, then they wind up getting fired, So anytime you have a rule that tells these billionaire coaches, and I get it, they can do whatever the hell they want to do because, they're the one that paid the billions for it. It's their asset. But at the end of the day, don't talk to me about, racial balance. Don't talk about, the disparity in coaching and in GM positions and coordinators across the NFL. Don't talk about it, be about it. Do something that makes a change. And I don't know. I don't know. I think that as we go through this process, I honestly believe that that all they're doing is just trying to figure out a way to, hush the noise. I think I heard today, and I don't have confirmation on it, but I do believe that there is, 2 other African-American coaches who are thinking about joining Brian Flores in his lawsuit against the NFL. And listen, the NFL is going to fight tooth and nail. the Denver Broncos, the New York Giants, the Miami Dolphins, they're going to vehemently dispute the fact that what Brian Flores said is the truth, and the burden lies upon him to be able to prove it. I love what Mike Tomlin did by hiring him, and I love the comment that he made this week. He was like, hey, I just didn't, and I was in a position to support Brian Flores. I didn't want him to be out there carrying this torch all by himself. Okay. Now, he's in a good place with a guy like Mike Tomlin. I respect the hell out of him. I already did. I respect him even that much more for his comments and what he did, for Brian Flores. But, I just think it's a sham. I think it's, the noise is hot and people are talking about it, and we're not going to stop talking about it. I'm not going to stop talking about it until there's some kind of, equality, in that area. It needs to happen. They also talked about trying to figure out a way to balance up the process. You got the Denver Broncos that are up for sale. And I'm trying to remember there's another team that potentially may be up for sale. It needs to be, some African Americans that have the opportunity to come in and buy a franchise. That changes the dynamics of all of these things. I don't know. It's just, it's you get people, and I love to listen to talk radio. I listen to Sirius Radio when I'm in Philly. I'm listening to WIP. I'm listening to, talk radio here in Arizona when I'm at home. But I like to hear people's take. And some of the takes are just flat out, wrong. And therein lies part of the problem, because it's the mentality on the side of the owners. Sometimes it gets perpetrated in the media. The media is saying the same thing. For this gentleman today to say, well, the ship has sailed on Eric Bieniemy, I don't know what the problem is, but he hasn't been hired and we just need to move on. No, we don't need to move on. That young man deserves an opportunity, to lead a team, to show what he can do. You think that Andy Reid hasn't prepped him the same way that he prepped, all of the guys on his tree? Nagy went to Chicago and fell on his face. I mean, I can go on down the list. There's a lot of guys. So why is it that this kid is stuck in purgatory, in coaching purgatory? And even Andy Reid said himself, I don't understand why this guy has not had a head coaching job. Why hasn't Byron Leftwich got a job? Why hasn't Todd Bowles got a second chance? Why hasn't Leslie Frazier got a second chance? Why hasn't Vance Joseph in his transformation of this Arizona Cardinals defense over the last 2 years? Why aren't we talking about him? Is it because the majority of these guys are defensive guys and the tilt is more towards, offensive guys, even though you still have those two guys that are sitting right there that are more than able to get the job done. There's enough great minds out there, and I'm pretty sure these guys have enough relationships that even if they're a defensive-minded coach, that you bring in an offensive-minded offensive coordinator, a guy who can come in that allows you as a head coach to say, guess what? You run the offensive side of the ball. Do your thing. I'm going to help my guys out on the defensive side of the ball, and I'm going to delegate duties. I'm going to do everything, okay? As a head coach, you're everything to everyone, okay? You're making decisions on what you should do in special team situation, whether you should go for it on fourth down on offense, on the defensive side of the ball. If that's where you're bent towards, you're having conversation with whoever your defensive coordinator is, you're still able to do all of that stuff. But you mean to tell me in order to be a head coach, you have to be this offensive guru? I mean, I'm looking at these gurus and I'm asking myself, are they really gurus? Dan Green, great comment. Hey, look at what DeMeco Ryan is doing in San Francisco with the San Francisco 49ers defense. Just a phenomenal job. Why haven't we haven't heard? We've heard the name, and guys will get interviews, but to me, these interviews are nothing more than the fulfillment of
the Rooney Rule. And to me, the Rooney Rule is just, it's a joke, because until some of these guys start to step into some of these jobs, I got problems with how it's handled and what it looks like. And they can dress it up any way they want to. They can put lipstick on a pig, but guess what? It's still a pig. All right. Let's jump over to the other side. We're going to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles here. Not a whole lot going on, but Howie Roseman has been quoted as saying, hey, the offseason is far from over. I'm curious to see, what that really means. I talked about those guys, those older guys that are still out there. Are the Eagles actually in position to make a move on, some of those guys that are still out there? A lot will depend on the Eagles salary cap situation. I talked about it in previous shows. If you've got, 3 first-round draft picks in the top 20, you got to consider how much money you're going to have to pay to these young guys as they're slotted. All the first-round positions are slotted. I don't know the number per se for sure, but I got to imagine that, if they pick 15, 16, and 19, that they're probably going to need upwards of, $10 to $15 million to get those guys locked up. That's not even counting, the other draft picks. I do believe that they've got somewhere in the neighborhood of, $27 million left, under the cap. And then they're trying to figure out, what they should do and how they go about it. Now, if they trade out of one of those positions, that leaves them a little more cap space, to maybe post-draft, if some of these guys are still around, to go and snatch some more. But, Howie again was quoted as saying the most important part of the free agency period was what we did in season. Because they locked up Mulata, they locked up Goddard, they locked up Maddox, and they locked up Josh Sweat. They extended all 4 of those guys in season. And then they turned around, they cut Fletcher, and they brought him back on a 1-year deal. They talked Jason Kelsey, and they sent him a keg of beer and talked him into coming back, for 1 more year. And Howie believes that, you have to solidify your offensive and your defensive line. I agree with that. The big splash free agency signing was Hassan Reddick, which, I like, but I'm still trying to figure out, how they're going to use him. That's the thing that concerns me the most is Jonathan Gannon's ability, to put on the field multiple defenses and defenses that are creative enough where you can have this guy. Because I believe Hassan can play off the ball. I believe that he can play on the ball as a pass rusher. I believe you can line him up on the tight end and play him, in certain situations where, he's a strong side backer. But you also want to be able to get him over on the weak side, and have him as a rusher. Even much more so, when he's lined up when the strength is, away from the right tackle, if it's the defensive strong right. But that was a big signing. He said, that was a position they're always looking to upgrade, the ability to pressure the opposing team's quarterbacks. And that was a big deal. And then he turned around this week and they re-signed Derek Barnett. Now, you talk about a head scratcher. That was a head scratcher for me. Maurice is, he's got some numbers here, no, wrong one. I'll give Maurice the benefit of the doubt that he knows exactly, what these numbers look like. But, Barnett signing and bringing back Fletcher for $14 million, he says that doesn't help the salary cap. I don't know what the numbers are on Barnett's deal and whether, he was given a big signing bonus. But, listen, you're right. I sometimes I wonder what it is, that Howie's actually, doing that, as far as the roster is concerned. Because when you look at, for me, you always have to look at production. Okay. What did guys do last year? What did Derek Barnett bring to the table last year? I understand, okay, Fletcher's got a high cap number, so you cut him, you bring him back. You bring him back from, something like a $20 million average, you bring him down, to 14. Yeah, okay. I get that. You want to make one more run. Howie is notorious for doing that. But neither of those guys really had stellar years last year. I'm not understanding the Barnett situation because I think that, after 4 or 5 years, I think we've seen and we know what he is, and the likelihood of him getting better than he is right now is not that high. And you've got some young guys that you drafted last year that you probably need to get a look at. Do you know for sure that, these are the guys that are going to help get you where it is you want to go? Do you want to take the chance of continuing to build with these young guys? When I look at what the Eagles have done in the free agency, then the question crops up in my head, and I ask you guys this, have they done enough? Have they done enough to get better? Have they gotten better? Sometimes when I look, I've seen all of this flurry and I see all of these teams that are making moves and whatnot, and how he's masterful with that salary cap. And I'm wondering why we haven't, really improved the roster. Now, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because, like he said, the offseason's far from over. You got a king's ransom of draft picks. There's no guarantee that the guys that you pick early on are going to be in a situation where they come in and they're productive year one. But I'm not so sure that they really, improved themselves. When I stop and think about, what else they've done, they signed Zach Pascal. I think that the coaching staff has some familiarity with him, which isn't all bad. But I think he's a mid-tier guy. I don't think he's a guy that's going to come in and really move the needle that much. He's got some experience. He knows the offense pretty darn well. Maybe as a veteran, he can embellish, some of his knowledge on these young players. I would like to have seen a guy that was much more accomplished, maybe a little older. I know you guys don't like, my thoughts on Julio Jones, but I think I'd much rather would have seen him come in here rather than, Zach Pascal. But I'm not going to say what the kid can't do. Let's see what he brings to the table. And then this week, they signed Kazir White, former Charger, another converted safety. That has not worked out well for us in the past. He's going into his 5th year. Last year was his first year as a full-time starter. 144 tackles, 90 solo tackles, 2 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, 1 sack, 7 tackles for loss. Those numbers sound great, but like I said, we need a guy at linebacker who can come in and be a difference maker. There's nothing wrong with those numbers. And there will be some added competition at the linebacker position, I believe. I think De'Veon Taylor will step up this year. I think that TJ Edwards, had a good year last year. He figured out, hey, I got a chance to start. I can be the guy. And he turned it up. Loved it. But I still think that he's a liability in the passing game. Kazir, hey, the dude can flat out run. I looked at some quotes that Anthony Lynn had about him because I think Anthony Lynn was the staff that actually drafted him. And they made the move in training camp, moved him from safety to linebacker. He only weighs 218 pounds. That's another concern. You playing off the ball, you're going to be lined up against offensive linemen that weigh, 320, 330, 315, and you're going to be giving up, 100 pounds easy to some of these guys. That's a concern. But I like his numbers. He had a breakout year. If you go and you look at his statistics each year, he's gotten better and better. But we don't need and I'm not saying this in a negative vein because the kid might come in and tear it up. I'm just saying we need a linebacker who is bona fide. We need a Nakobe Dean. We need a Devin Lloyd. These are the type of players that we need in order to upgrade that position. Because all you have to do is look around and look at the great defenses in the NFL. It's very easy to see the reason why a lot of these, even if you've got a great defensive front, what is so wrong with having at least one bona fide ass kicker at linebacker? You got to have at least one. Okay, you can't keep going for these guys that are mid-tier, 4th round, 5th round, free agent, Canadian, converted safety. Go get a guy who's cut his teeth. He's been playing linebacker, ever since he was in, Pee Wee football, who understands how to play the game, has been, bred to play the game the right way. GV, I'm not even going to mess with your name, man, but I'm going to throw it here. GV says Bobby Wagner wants $11 million for a 1-year deal. Hey, listen, people in hell want ice water. That don't mean they're going to get it, okay? And I get it. Like I said earlier, he's been playing he's been one of the top linebackers, if not the best inside linebacker in the NFL, for a long time, And sometimes your pride will get in your way and say, hey, you know what? I'm worth this. Well, you're only worth what the market will pay. And I think at some point in time, somewhere down along the way, he knows that somebody's going to come calling. The problem is, okay, when it comes crunch time, is there a team out there that's going to say, hey, we'll give you 9, we'll give you 10? The Eagles ain't spending that kind of money on no linebacker, man. They just ain't doing that, So the only hope we have at getting, Bobby Wagner is, that he stands his ground on that, $11 million 1-year deal. And at some point, he realizes that it's not there. And, the numbers continue to fall, because I think the longer that you're out there, the closer you get to training camp, the more your numbers going to fall. That's why, the free agent period, especially in the beginning, in the tampering period, is so important. Age is important. These guys, I feel for them when they get, released the first day of free agency or into the free agency period, because what the team has done, the team lets them go that late. They pretty much put them in a no-win situation. They put them in a situation where they're fighting. Now, the guys that are left out there that don't already have their deal done, or a team is waiting for the June 1 designation where they can get that money off the book and then sign a guy, those guys are in a tough position, man. Because if that's not the case for Bobby Wagner, he might be one of those guys that winds up, having to take a $4.5, $3.8 million deal. That's a heck of a haircut, for a guy of his stature. Is he a guy that will do that? Is he a guy that will say, hey, I just want to keep playing. This is an opportunity to keep playing. I'll take it. Or, some guys, their pride get in the way, and it's like, listen, man, I've been making over $10 million for the last 7 years. I'm not playing for that kind of money. I'll go play golf and retire. That's what I'll do. But, who knows? Who knows where it's going and how this whole thing is going to play out. But like I said, there's still a lot of productive free agents out there. And I can't wait to see what it is that Howie Roseman is going to do, with those guys that are out there that could possibly come in and help. Maybe, and I know a lot of you guys don't want to hear this, maybe the Eagles aren't really in a position. Maybe they feel like they're not in that position to compete quite yet. Could that be a reason why they haven't been all that active in the free agent market? Yeah, you want to have your stalwarts back. You want to have a guy like Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox back, because those guys are probably, the two biggest leaders that you have on the team. You want those guys back. But I also believe that there's a chance that the Eagles really believe that, according to Jeffrey Lurie last year, that the team is in transition. That the team, realized that they had mortgaged some of the future to continue to chase Super Bowls beyond 2017. And at some point, they knew that was going to bite them. So now that they're kind of in this, refocusing mood, this transition mode, I should say, is the thinking that, maybe we're still a year away. So we're not going to sign a guy, some of these guys to 10 million plus a year contracts for 1 year when we're not really ready. Even though we made the playoffs last year, we're not ready to really compete for a Super Bowl. See, I'm of a different mindset. I've just always thought, and I've always believed that, you know what? You build your roster out and you get as close to contending as you can possibly get. And then you begin to make moves for the added pieces, the pieces that you deem are necessary for you to actually get it done. See, this is why I feel the way that I feel about Jalen Hurts. A lot of people want the Eagles to, use those three first round draft picks and go get Russell Wilson, the Deshaun Watson, or whoever else, some of these guys was loving out there. The problem is, if you go get that guy and you don't have enough talent around him, then it's all for naught. So build your roster out, get as good as you can get. And then when you get to a point where you're missing the quarterback, or you missing a linebacker, or you're missing a cornerback or a safety or a defensive tackle, now you can use some draft capital to go get that guy that you need to put you over the hump. And maybe, just maybe, I'm just throwing out a whole bunch of maybes because it's the off season and that's what we do. We pontificate. Just maybe that's the way that the Eagles and Howie Roseman are actually playing this thing right now. I mean, no one really knows because I expected for them, being $30 million under the cap, I expected for them to be very, very active, in the free agent market. I expected to see more guys, get their deals, redone, restructured. Even though it kind of mortgages the future because you're pushing that money into the future, I expected, to see them convert more guys, some of their contract to bonuses, to free up cap space now. But as I watch this thing play out, it makes me kind of believe that they think that they're still a year away. They want to see what Jalen brings to the table and give him another year to grow and see if he can be the guy. Give these young wide receivers an opportunity to grow a little more. Some of these young offensive linemen an opportunity to mature and create more depth and get ready for, when there's an exodus of, a Jason Kelce, when there's an exodus of a Lane Johnson. Hopefully, that won't be for a while, but you never know what's going on in the guy's head and when he's just about had enough. So you got to prepare for that. You got to look long term. You got to be thinking about that. You can't just ignore the fact that you pretty much had to coax Jason Kelce, to come back for another year. So we'll see. Some of these I already see Jeff. I'm gonna give you a little love, man. Here you go, hating on my quarterback. Jeff said, ain't no quarterback making the Super Bowl throwing only 16 touchdowns. You might be right. But you also got to take into consideration the kid was learning his third offense in the last 3 years. Okay, so it takes time for a quarterback to understand an offense and where he should go with the ball and everything that he should do. This is one of the things that I want to talk about as far as the quarterback position is concerned. And this is one of the things that bothers me, especially as a guy who was drafted late in the 8th round, and became a Pro Bowl player myself, okay? Why is it that when a team drafts a quarterback in the top 15, teams, fans, media, they are so much more patient with that guy that's drafted in the top 15 than they are with the guy that's drafted, into the second round and later. Okay. Each player that comes into the NFL, there's a growth period. Now, the dynamics of their skill set might be greater. Okay. But every single player that's drafted, you are drafting them on nothing but pure potential. Okay. We've seen guys who are supposed to be the next coming fall flat on their face and accomplish nothing. We've seen guys who didn't even get drafted become, perennial all pros. Okay. So I'm trying to wrap my brain around why there's so much hate for Jalen Hurts, and I just don't get it. We were willing, because Carson Wentz didn't play all that great his first year. The team went 7-9 on the strength of, the defense, in my opinion. But everybody was okay to give Carson that latitude because he was the number 2 overall draft pick. And everybody was just going crazy about the potential. Okay. Why can't we give Jalen Hurts the same latitude? Let's get to year 2 and see how this guy develops. Let's see if this coaching staff can turn him into, a franchise quarterback. Let's see if the lessons that he endured this season manifest in a different way that allows him, to take that resilience, that resilient nature that we all see in him and say, okay, these are the areas that I need to get better. And then is he in the offseason going to get better? Okay, because the Eagles aren't going anywhere in the interim. So why not give this young guy an opportunity to grow? And if he grows into what we expect him to be, then listen, we still got him for another 2 years under his rookie deal, right? That gives us great flexibility to build the roster the same way that we did when we won the Super Bowl in 2017. Am I correct? So, why so much hate? Peyton Manning came into the league, played like garbage his first 2 years. Then all of a sudden he turned it around and figured it out. I'm not saying that Jalen Hurts is going to be Peyton Manning, okay? Don't even go there, okay? There's right here, Dan's talking about Tua. Exactly. That's why I knew Tua was a mistake, okay? So now, Tua's going into what, his third, fourth year? And we still don't know with any kind of certainty what he's going to be. But guess what? Because he was picked 5th overall, Miami is riding with him. And they ain't trying to hear nothing about Deshaun Watson and nobody else. The owner, the head coach, and anybody else that you want to ask in Miami, hey, Tua's our guy. And guess what? Look, we went and got the cheetah, and we got, Waddle. We got enough down here to help make this guy better. Okay. So why not go and get enough talent to surround Jalen Hurts and give him another year and see exactly what he can be. Okay. Because nobody knows. Listen, if anybody knows, I know. You can look at a guy and you can project for a guy. Guys can go to Indianapolis and they can run a fast 40 and they can jump out of the gym on the vertical jump and they can broad jump out of the gym. These guys are learning how to game the system. So when they go down to Indianapolis, they're going to post great numbers. Okay. They know how to do that. They know how to game the system. Okay. And you got all of these metrics that you're measuring. When a guy runs a sub, 4.40, he's the buzz. He's the guy. And then you turn around, and once you get him on the football field, it doesn't really turn out the way that you thought it was going to turn out. Why? Because you can't measure this. You can't measure football intellect. I don't care how many Wonderlic tests guys take. I've seen guys bomb the Wonderlic test and get on the football field, and they're football savants. Okay? So I'm not one for saying what a guy can and can't do. Prove it. Jalen showed us some good things. He showed us some bad things. What would you expect from any young quarterback coming into the NFL, learning a new system his first year in the league. Let's see how he progresses next year. Okay. And if he's not the guy at the end of the year, you guys know me better than anybody. I will be the first one to say the Eagles got a quarterback problem and they need to go get a damn quarterback. Y'all know that that's the fact and that's the truth. Okay. But let's stop beating this kid up and give him an opportunity to realize his talent. There's nothing wrong with that. All right. Before I sign off, I would be remiss, absolutely remiss, if I didn't touch on what we saw at the Oscars on Sunday night. What in the hell is going on with Will Smith slapping Chris Rock? Not on national TV. I'm talking about on international TV. You slapping a comedian because he made a joke about your wife's hair? Are you kidding me? Okay. So when did we get to a point where we as men have become so offended, so wussified, and all of that other stuff that we just can't laugh and keep it moving, you know? And the thing that bothers me the most is you got two brothers up there in front of the entire world acting the fool, okay? And it just made no sense. I mean, you're laughing 1 second, the next second you walk up on the stage and you slap a grown man, and then you're cussing on live TV, dropping F-bombs. It absolutely blew me away. It blew me away. Okay. And I love me some Will Smith. Don't ever get it twisted. I loved him as a rapper. I like him as an actor. But I fear that, you know, what he did just, you know, undid a lot of good things that this young brother, you know, has stood for. And I just thought it was appalling, you know. I mean, the first thing that came to my mind, I was like, man, if that was The Rock up there making those jokes, would he have strolled his ass up on the stage and slapped the shit out of The Rock? I just, you know, it just blew my mind. It blew my mind. I thought it was like a joke, something staged. But man, when you see, I mean, he slapped the taste out of his mouth and then walked back to his damn table and just dropping F-bombs. What in the world is going on in the world in which we live? Man up, learn to laugh, and keep it moving. Okay? Keep it moving. I just don't get it, man. You know, I don't get it. Brothers, we got to love each other, man. And I don't understand what in the world that was all about. Well, I'm going to wrap right there. As usual, you guys take care of each other and be good to each other. But most importantly, make sure that you love each other. I'll be right back here next week with you guys. Kicking the knowledge again. We'll be talking about whatever's current news in the NFL. And of course, we'll be talking about our beloved Eagles. Peace.